Well, hello and welcome to Live at 5. I'm Alexis Dennehy. Today I'd love to share with you what it's like to be a member of the yoga and psychology community. This is a community that Dr. Rachel Hannam and I have grown together in the last couple of years, and we're seeing some really tremendous results, and it's a joy to be a part of. It's a privilege to see your growth, and very soon I'll be inviting one of our valued members, Livy, to join us and let us know about her experience. But in the meantime, I wanted to share, well, really answer a few of the questions that have been coming up just through the time that we've been running these live streams. And the first one is, if you don't work at North Brisbane Psychologist, Alexis, what are you doing on the live stream? And I would really like to respond to this because I've met many of the beautiful psychologists at NBP, and as many of you have seen our interviews, we've got to pick their brains and learn their wisdom, and I have huge respect for all psychologists, particularly those at NBP. You guys are incredible. And so I wanted to let you know that, well, Rachel and I are colleagues. Over the last couple of years, we've been working very closely together, and I partnered with Rachel following my public health, my master's in public health, when we decided that we would come together to bring mental health and psychological strategies and resources to make it more accessible to everybody. So that's when we started the monthly practice group, and we decided that our central theme would be non-violent communication, and that central theme has really offered us a grounding and a framework that all of us have been embodying now together, and we've reached a point that there is a sustainability in the practice. We have also decided, and this is more to do with my background as a naturopath, that we'll be applying trauma-informed policy. So without getting too technical, I just wanted to let you know what I do as a naturopath. That's the other question. No, I'm not a psychologist. I am a naturopath, so many think of me as an alternative or a complement to their GP. And what that means is that I've treated all sorts of conditions in the last 20 years. And increasingly, I've found the value of mindfulness and yoga as therapeutic tools. And what I've found is, well, really that the basis of naturopathy is that rather than working against the body with antibiotics or anti-inflammatories, that the premise of naturopathy is that your body has a vital force and energy, and that if we can work with these innate mechanisms for wellness, that we can sustain wellness lifelong. So Livy is just about to join us. Yeah, I just wanted to give you that bit of a background there, and to let you know that you're all welcome, whether you are a practitioner or whether you are a client or a patient. We would love to have you along to our monthly practice group in non-violent communication, and you're also welcome to attend our retreats that are coming up, and we'll give you some more information about that later on. So without further ado, let's see if Libby is ready to join in. Hello, Libby. Hello, Libby. Can you hear me?
I can.
And I can hear you. Fab. So,
yes.
Would you mind if we started by letting our listeners know what to expect? Do you need a moment?
I'm just going to get off the other screen.
Oh, yes. I've done that myself in the past.
All right.
Take your time.
I got it now. It's all good. Yes. Yeah. I could hear myself in 2 ears. It was weird.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for sorting that.
Yeah.
So the first question I think people would be interested to know is what to expect, as in, you know, from when they might have seen our Facebook posts, that they might have seen that we run the monthly practice group. They might think, oh, yes, look, I'm aware on a Sunday morning, I'd like to give that a try. It looks very inclusive, or whatever it is that might appeal to them. And then what would be the process for somebody who's coming along? I'm interested to hear it from your perspective.
From my perspective, I think the key thing is that to reach out, obviously, to anyone, however you've heard about it, just to make sure that you know where you're going. It's not that hard to find. It's Graceville's Bowls Club. It's been there for a very long time. You need to make sure that you're prepared to sort of be reflective and to really listen actively to other people. So while it's a journey for yourself, it's also about participating with other people. What to expect? Well, big room, lots of space, so don't think it's a dungeon or anything like that. There are a few stairs, so make sure that you're able. We don't have any other ability to get people upstairs at the moment. Bring a cushion or something potentially to feel comfortable on. We like to sit on the floor majority of the time, but there's also chairs there for people to sit up if that's possible, if that's what you actually need. For me, I think the thing to expect is that it's never quite the same every day, each time. For me, the first time I went, I was very emotional and raw. And then there's been other times where I'm just observant and I like to listen and I like to participate, but I'm not necessarily having any sort of strong feelings in the moment. Sometimes they come after the session. I think the thing that people would want to make sure, I guess I would like to know, if I was looking back, I've been doing it for a year now, just over a year now. I would like to know how much laughter there is as well, that there's a lot of kindness and humour that just means that it's joyous. It's a very joyous kind of environment. There's a lot of participation is voluntary. You do not have to participate if you do not want to. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of people who are brand new and people who've been doing it for a little while. So there's always a mix. There's never a just, I think there was one time last year where there was only about 8 or 9 of us. And I think it was because it was pouring with rain or whatever had happened. And that's a different experience. But for any newcomers, they should feel that they just need to come along and be inquisitive, be aware that they can say no, that they don't have to participate, and be willing to ask questions though and say, hey, Alexis or Dr. Rachel, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you say it another way? We always like to show examples, which I think is really powerful when learning as well. So yeah.
Thank you for that description. It's so lovely to hear, from an insider, from your experience.
Yeah.
I loved particularly you mentioned that it's a joyful space, because sometimes, when we're talking about our inner experience, there are highly emotional experiences that come up. But my experience with NVC has been that it's spacious. So everything's held fairly lightly. I'd say a firmly held community, in that we are safe and inclusive, and we do draw from
generous,
very
generous, like that. Well, like just when you did that, there's that generosity in the group.
There is. My experience has been that the frameworks have given us structure, so that all walks of life can know that there's a basic kind of what to expect. I guess like when you go to McDonald's and you know what to expect, when you come to an NVC group, there's this basic kind of standard. So in fact, anyone from all around the world, and we have had participants come, from down south, we've had participants come from the UK, and there's a certain standard that has been set by Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of NVC. And so that feeling of being held, but lightly held, is probably how I would describe my
and respected as well. So there's structure and there's respect in other people's space and journey. And as you just said, there's a safety that comes with that as well, which is, we're there, we're first name basis, but it's not, here's the story. That, I guess that would be the other thing, is for those people who haven't experienced NVC, there's a difference between telling a story and sharing what's going on in your life. And we're not there to hear the story about your sisters, brothers, or anyone that's intimate to you. It's actually, we're trying to get to the inner workings. And so you don't have to use people's names. You don't have to share the detail. We're actually more interested in how you feel. And that's what the needs and the feelings are about. So that's something to share as well, as you don't need to be fearful that someone's going to gossip about you or share a story about you. That's not what we're there for either.
Thank you for that, Libby. Yes. So Libby, for those of you listening who are not familiar with NVC, Libby's mentioned the feelings and needs, which are the central facet of nonviolent communication. And the beauty is, as you've just described, Libby, and thank you so much for that, the story is really just a source of material. But the feelings and the needs, especially as they are within the body, let us know what's important to us, what we value, what we long for. And I think that is something that Rachel and I are hoping to bring, particularly by bringing in aspects of yoga and mindfulness, even breath work, is that there are many experiences that are non-verbal and we can't even necessarily put language to them. So this brings me to the next point, which is that the yoga and psychology community and all of the offerings that we provide are trauma-informed, which, I don't know, Libby, are you starting to hear that in the corporate space at all, trauma-informed?
Yeah,
yes?
yeah, very much so. And I think it's something that it's even stuff that you read online at the moment, there's a lot more articles being written. Certainly I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. There's a lot more articles being written around embracing the fact that trauma colors things. It may not be the thing that's being acted on right now, but it's in the background and it's really influencing how people are being treated and really trying to get to the root of it, which is hard for us all, I think. But yeah, it's definitely coming up more and more as a common term, a more familiar term.
Good. It's certainly become, an expectation in the US, which is where the majority of the research is coming from. And there is an increasing awareness, as you say, that we all carry a certain level of trauma, all of us in our bodies, whether it was from our own birth experience or lack of attachment with our caregivers, or experiences that are inevitable, separation of parents. But some level of trauma lives inside of us, and that's the beauty of practices that do incorporate the body, that we can build a different and more loving relationship with these past experiences without even necessarily having to go over the story, to revisit. So I'm really pleased that you mentioned the feelings and the needs as a central facet. I think that the non-verbal processing is really quite profound for many people. I'm not sure if you've noticed a few members of the group who, would sit and observe for multiple sessions. In fact, most people when they come just want to watch, but you can see there's something happening inside. And when they do start to open up, there's this beautiful unfolding and beautiful sharing that happens in the group.
It's an aha moment, to be honest with you, Alexis, like not having studied Marshall Rosenberg and only just hearing about who he is. And there's so many things, Daniel, got his last name already, from Emotional Intelligence. Can't think of his last name, Daniel somebody.
Goleman.
Goleman, yeah. Yes. And so there's emotional intelligence stuff. So there's all sorts of things to read. And you and Rachel are a great source of, and so is Caroline and anyone else who sort of facilitate us, great source of knowledge around that. But you have to have your own aha moment to really get it. And I certainly didn't the first time I went along, while I found it really interesting and empowering and wonderful to actually have conversations around my needs and my feelings and what I was observing because we don't talk like that in our general day-to-day conversation. So that was joyous in itself, was having real conversations around how I felt about things. And how as I was feeling at that point, but then having the aha moment to actually process it, like what you're describing, I think, like to actually then use the practice. I think that certainly new people and people who process things very deeply, very strongly, and they will need more time to have that processing, and then being, as you said, then being able to unfurl it as such a powerful tool. And so there's definitely never any pressure, I find, in the group to have momentous breakthroughs every single time. No, that's not what we're there for. It's practice. It's to really engage in a muscle and to make it familiar, and to talk it with people who are talking the same language, which is, that's the way I look at it as well. It's like learning a language.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're reminding me of a conversation I had in the lead up to our conversation today with a dear community member, Mia, who couldn't join us on the live stream, but she wanted us to share her story. So feel free to add anything from your perspective. But Mia spoke about NVC being the missing link, and that's been my experience. I think from Mia's perspective, she was talking about psychology and having done a lot of therapy. She mentioned schema therapy as an example, and then hearing a lot about mindfulness and staying in the present and observing her thoughts. But there was this kind of, well, how do I actually do that? How do these things come together? The theory and what does it even mean to be an observer? So the practice, I think, and the application, and that's where, we do provide a practice group so that we can embody and get our mouths around it, get our brains around it, and start to really live it, even in relationship. So I thought that really resonated to me, that NVC provided her, as she said, it helped me to identify the words that I was speaking to myself, right? And then she could say, well, what does that mean? What do I actually mean by that? And is that pointing to something that's important to me? And oh yes, that's what I've been longing for this whole time, rather than it being this just massive of feelings, thoughts, all kind of in one big jumble. And that has been my experience. And I think for many people, the system of NVC helps us to break down our inner experience in a completely non-dogmatic way, just so simple. And for me personally, I'm just remembering it was the difference between an internal experience where I practiced interoception for many, many years, mindful awareness of myself, my sensory experience, my emotions, my thoughts, my body, but then to share that in an interpersonal way. And so NVC for me has become a meditation, a mindful practice that's shared. And there's something so deep about that, and so valuable. I think I had longed for it my whole life. And I think looking inward, which those of us who are inclined to self-analysis I think it can get too much, so having someone else to just normalize things or regulate things, or say you're a crazy mofo, that's okay too,
that's true. I also think I so agree with you, and definitely you've articulated Mina's journey incredibly well, Alexis. Is she had a mind moment to go, wow, this is the bridge between all of these feelings and then this external world, and it's like, oh, these two things that this is how it connects. I'm going to extend your point, which is it actually empowered me, because for those of us who do think internally, sometimes we just think we have to fix ourselves. We have to give all these things to ourselves. And what NVC has given me is the language to be able to say to another person in a relationship of any sort, hey, I'm feeling that, I notice this, I'm feeling this because I need this. Can you help me?
Yes.
Or more importantly, if they're going, why do you feel this way? Because I need this, because I need this thing. And if you want to help me get the thing. And that's the bit that I think for me has been incredibly powerful. Again, wanting to work on myself, 2022 is that year for me, working on myself, but then realizing that I can't do it all myself. And sometimes I need help, and I need people to participate in my journey to wellness and mental wellness and happiness. Therefore, I have to articulate some of those things. And that's really been incredibly empowering. Like I feel very powerful and confident when I am engaged in any conversation where my needs are at the forefront of my mind, because I have the language to be able to articulate it. Yeah, that's been a huge benefit. It's been great.
Yeah, you've just summed up what I think is really an essential benefit of NVC, and I've seen it in you, Libby, and you know, yeah, I hear, you know, particularly I think, yeah, for probably women over a certain age bracket, there's a strong people-pleasing schema, self-sacrificing schema, and NVC gives us a way to bypass that need for approval, or that over-focus on others, to recognise, yeah, actually my needs matter. That's, again, something Mia said today.
Yes, my needs matter.
Yeah. It's powerful.
It's so powerful.
Now we must move along to focus on the retreat just for a moment.
Yeah.
And just as way of intro, you mentioned something that reminded me of, you know, the word violence in non-violent communication. Yeah, I mean, you've spoken about things like respect, you've spoken about feeling held. And you know, there's a lot of people have an aversion to the name nonviolent communication, and Rachel and I have questioned, well, do we call it that, or do we call it compassionate communication, mindful communication? I know Carolyn calls it. But there is increasingly in the political space an awareness of violence, you know, in the home, and increasingly even violent structures. This is it's a well-accepted public health issue, actually, that violence can become embedded in institutions. In certain cultures, there are ways in which coercion and control are used to power over. We touched on power over versus power with a little bit in last week's conversation. I know you and I have had these conversations too, Libby, but that's something that Rachel and I are really passionate about, and why we're committed to it long term, because we know that if we're really going to have a decent grassroots influence, it's going to have to be through shifting through language, as you've said, such a powerful way to do it, even in some small way, having an influence over the structures around violence. Yeah, I don't know. Does that raise?
No, it's funny you say it, because I flinch at the non-violent communication as well. Like when I first did it, like when I first read, I'm like, why did they call it that? That's such a silly name. Yes. And then over time, having gotten a little bit more involved with some of the social issues we have.
Yes.
I actually think it's a great name, because it is exactly what it says it is non-violent communication. There is no way, done properly, it can be perceived as anything else. I'm not asking you, I'm making a request, remember? I'm not demanding, I'm not, I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm not doing any of those things. I'm identifying what I need. Now, that's the if you'd asked me 12 months ago, I would have gone, I hate the term nonviolent communication. And when I explain to my friends or peers that I'm going on a retreat and it's yoga and psychology, and they're like, what's that? And then I start telling them about this nonviolent communication. They're like, why is it nonviolent? Like, what's... And I said, think about some of the, your road raging and what you say out loud. That's violent. It's very it's violent. And then, yes, you extend it into some of those domestic violence, that controlling and coercion. That's violent. It doesn't mean, I haven't looked up the definition. I may be using it really wrong, but in my mind, it's violent. It's not calm, it's not compassionate, it's not empathetic. So it's funny that you say that, because I hadn't really connected that. Yeah, 12 months ago I didn't like it, and now I think it's actually the perfect naming for it, because it can't be violent. It just can't. So it's a really good practice. I still think I love your self, what is it? Compassion that you said, like, it's a compassionate way of describing things. But yeah, I like the non-violent. But the retreat that you started talking about, and we diverged a bit, that I was just thinking it's the practice groups, but it's jet fueled. It's the practice groups, but it's condensed and so focused. And it's giving people an opportunity to have like a speed course on it, like a intense course on it, without being intense in the sense of, again, you don't have to have breakthroughs. There's no criteria to tick box. It's literally going through the journey. But certainly when we were all getting ready to leave the retreat last year, there was a lot of talk about how do we keep the intensity, because when you're talking with the same like-minded people and really being respectful of, Libby wants to have breakfast by herself because she needs some quiet time and things like that. It actually, the irony is, when you take yourself out of that retreat space where it's safe and everyone's on the same page, you have to use what you've learned in the real world. And so it as much as none of us wanted to leave ever, it was still an opportunity to take what we'd learned over that period of time, to actually put it into our day-to-day life. But having that 4 days of intensity, or focus is the other word we like to use, was that real focus on what we were doing, gives everyone the opportunity to learn a lot more and to really get that foundational, in like really deep lessons in place. So I think that's the advantage over, it's not the advantage with going on a retreat. It gives you that intensity, and it is isolated, and it's perfect for, you don't have to worry about food or going to Coles or road rage, or, I think that there's no road rage at Strategy, I don't believe. But it's also just, if anything, there's people walking around, lots of people walking.
It's a peaceful place. We've chosen it specifically because it is calm, and being on the bay side, we're away from any of the hype. Up at the point, we get the swirling of the waters. It's an incredibly diverse environment where we've been meeting for the last, I think this is 9 years now. And I love the jet-fueled practice group, because it's an opportunity to immerse fully in what it would be like to be living a yogic way of life, to be living mindfully, to really embed it in all the things that I'm doing, whether I'm washing up, whether I'm brushing my teeth, whether I'm gazing at the ocean, whether I'm interacting or being, a part of a small community for a period of time. And that is exactly how it started. In fact, it started when I had a number of yoga groups I was working with in the city, and they said, "Hey, Alexis, can we go away?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do this." And it has been an emerging process where we definitely base it on the needs of the group. So our focus is to, as I mentioned, hold really firmly a space of do no harm, psychologically safe, physically safe. And that way, whatever emerges is a movement towards healing. And that's the Hippocratic Oath: first do no harm. And even if that's all we did, if that's all we were committed to in our words and our actions to ourselves and to each other, then healing happens, wholeness happens, trauma is resolved. We can embrace parts of ourselves that we've denied. So I'm really, I love hearing your experience of it, Libby, because it's beautiful, to say the least, to really see the group, the process that happens. And yes, I agree. Ultimately, it is about embodying resources, practices, actual practical tools for maintaining my own emotional, mental, physical wellness. And then, ultimately how that then flows into our families and our communities, organisations. So, we would love to extend the invitation to newcomers, as well as our regular community. And I'm really acknowledging this time around that ours is Australia's first trauma-informed retreat. It has been trauma-informed now for a couple of years, but yeah, I'm like, you know what?
Absolutely. Way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge thing to say. Yeah.
It is. And we've been drawing on Blue Knot and their powerful research in the trauma, particularly complex trauma space. So we know that, we have the confidence that you can bring yourself, bring your whole self to retreat. It's all welcome.
And it's very safe for every aspect of your journey, with Dr. Rachel Hannam there, as well as yourself, Alexis, who really do hold the space incredibly well. But knowing that it's very safe and it's very inclusive, and also it is a commitment on your own behalf, as well as from Rachel and Alexis, that what they bring is a huge wealth of knowledge and experience in the same space.
Thank you, Libby. It's really a joy to have you along. So I think that's us for today. I will put a link to the retreat and also to the practice group in the comments below. And
next practice group is the 26th of March, I think it is. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, that's right. The last Sunday of every month we are there, and it's $5 donation, so very accessible. The other thing I'd just like to mention before we sign off is that I do have availability at the moment for trauma-informed somatic therapy. So whether you're a psychologist and you're looking for more support around body-based practices, please feel free to send people to my website. That's onenaturaltherapies.com.au. Or if you are a patient and you're looking to complement the work that you're doing with your psychologist with more body-based somatic awareness, perhaps there's a sense that there's some underlying trauma that you'd like to learn to be with, to change very gently your relationship with this pattern, then please do book in with me, onenaturaltherapies.com.au. Anything else that you'd like to add, Libby? What do we call it a day?
Call it a day. The only thing I will say is the MVC extends past. It helps you with future, and I've used it in my workplace several times since getting the confidence with it, and has been really beneficial to say some things that are needed in the workplace. So yes, so come along.
Yes, and I would love to hear more about those examples. So let's get you back on the show.
Love to.
Thanks, Libby. Thanks for listening,
Thank you.
everybody. Bye.
Bye.